The closing bell is rung, but the business story continues. I'm Robert Tan. You're watching Business Brief. Let's get started. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas raises to 1 million pesos the cash withdrawal limit that would trigger enhanced due diligence or EDD. The House Justice Committee finds 2 impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte sufficient in substance. Ultra Bilyonaryo and Meralco CEO Manny Pangilinan says they will review their fuel supply to soften the impact of higher oil prices to power rates. And in Iran, the building which houses officials who will choose the country's leader is destroyed in an air attack. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is doubling the cash withdrawal limit that triggers enhanced due diligence, allowing more legitimate transactions to flow smoothly. In a statement, the BSP announces an increased threshold for cash withdrawals from 500,000 pesos to 1 million pesos. The move aims to focus on high-risk activity while streamlining recurring payments like payroll, loans, and project disbursements. Deposits or withdrawals above 1 million pesos will still require proof of legitimacy. Banks can set lower limits based on risk assessments. For regular large transactions, the enhanced due diligence rules apply per customer, not per transaction. For more on the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' latest policy move, we're joined by Brian Ang, Vice President for Trade and Industry at the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good afternoon, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Robert, and welcome to your viewers.
Now, Brian, what is your initial reaction to the BSP's decision to raise the cash withdrawal threshold for enhanced due diligence from 500,000 pesos to 1 million pesos?
Well, immediately, we would like to thank the BSP and the efforts of Secretary Go for increasing and doubling what was a 500,000 cash minimum to 1 million peso. If you remember, Robert, the PCCI actually met the DOF Secretary earlier this year. And first on our agenda was the concern of our micro and small medium enterprises on this minimum 500,000 withdrawal. They were having an extremely difficult time, and Secretary Go immediately took action. And if you know, Robert, the reality is he wanted to even increase this to 5 million peso. So maybe BSP wants to take this one step at a time and give us 1 million peso first. But we welcome this greatly, and this will be a big assistance to our MSMEs, specifically the construction sector and also agricultural sector.
How much of an impact will this have for businesses and entrepreneurs?
This will be a big impact, especially for small businesses. You and I, Robert, we have a relationship most likely with our branch managers, and will not have this problem to withdraw over 500,000 or a million. But the small businessman who does not have relationships with their business, with their banks, will always be asked for supporting documents, even if it is meant for legitimate payroll or to pay off suppliers. The bank will always ask them for a lot of supporting documents, even the names of their employees, PIN number, SSS number, etc. And so you can see the difficulty for our small businesses on how they can go about their day-to-day business. Even for construction, those who are into, as you know, the construction industry, a lot of the salaries are paid on a weekly basis. A lot of suppliers in the informal sector are paid also through cash basis. So we welcome this greatly, and this will be a great impact for the ease of doing business. But I hope it will not end here.
Now, Brian, looking at the other side of the coin, some would argue that could this higher limit create new vulnerabilities for illicit financial flows despite the risk-based framework?
Robert, before any of us opens a bank account, whether it be individual or corporate, the bank does their KYC or know your customer. A lot of due diligence is already done on the back end before we are allowed to open our accounts. And so banks already know what type of business we are in, what are the usual transactions that we are doing. So this is not out of the ordinary to allow us to withdraw what is our own money to begin with, what is our hard-earned money. In fact, we were laughing in our meeting with the DOF and saying, why is it that the sins of these contractors and these corrupt politicians who are less than 1,000 have to be paid for by the millions of legitimate depositors and legitimate businessmen. We are the ones who are having difficulty to conduct our day-to-day business and withdrawing our hard-earned money. But then the kasalanan naman is really on their end. They were the ones who posted the photos of all that cash in the billiard table. They were the ones who were moving Rimowa cases back and forth. Diba? This has nothing to do with the private sector, nothing to do with our small and medium enterprises at all.
Does shifting enhance due diligence to the customer level instead of per transaction reduce oversight, or does it simply cut red tape for legitimate businesses?
This is actually very welcome for us. It simplifies the system. It simplifies the procedure of withdrawing cash. You know, if you are already known by the bank to be a legitimate depositor, to do legitimate transactions, they will no longer check you per transaction. You are already under the KYC of your depositor name and your company name. So we welcome this. This makes it easier, makes the process faster also.
How should the BSP strengthen safeguards to ensure transactions that are up to 1 million pesos will not be used for illicit activities?
Well, the safeguards are already in place, and 1 million pesos is so little. The problem then was billions were being withdrawn. And if it was in the billions, how is that even possible that you can withdraw a billion when Juan de la Cruz, who honestly earned his money, cannot even withdraw 500,000 before? So the banks have their own KYC. We should trust in the banks.
Now, Brian, on another issue, analysts say rising oil prices could complicate the central bank's easing path this year as high fuel costs broaden inflationary pressures. What do you think about this?
Well, Dubai crude is now at 76.50, and the president has asked the legislative to give him emergency powers. This just shows the urgency of the issue, and I hope that the legislative Congress will give the president emergency powers so that he can make the necessary interventions. The private sector has called for the temporary suspension, maybe excise tax for an X number of days. We have heard President Trump say that this war will at least last 4 to 5 weeks. And I don't know if the people, the small businessmen again, the commuters, can afford this endless increase in oil. What if it reaches 90, 100?
Yes. Okay, on that note, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, Brian, and sharing us your insights.
Thank you, Robert.
Meanwhile, oil and gas prices surge amid rising tensions in the Middle East. This came as the U.S.-Israel war on Iran halted energy exports from the region. Tehran also attacked ships and energy facilities, disrupting navigation in the Gulf. The attack forced production stoppages from Qatar to Iraq. Christopher Wong, a strategist at OCBC, said higher oil prices resulting from escalating geopolitical tensions in Iran added to inflationary concerns. He noted that this also complicated the outlook for monetary easing. As of 2:34 p.m., Brent crude rose $83.37, while West Texas Intermediate is at $76.17. President Bongbong Marcos is reportedly open to cutting down the average work week by a day. According to Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro, PBBM is not shutting down Senator Win Gatchalian's proposal for a 4-day work week. Gatchalian earlier suggested a 4-day work week or work-from-home arrangements as a way to help Filipinos save resources. The discussion comes as oil prices climb due to ongoing Middle East tensions impacting daily living costs. Castro adds that the proposal still needs to be reviewed and discussed by the Marcos cabinet. A lawmaker backs proposals to cut excise taxes on imported oil to shield Filipinos from potential price surges. On Bilyonaryo News Channel's At the Forefront, Ako Bicol Party List Representative John Almario Chan says he supports granting President Bongbong Marcos emergency powers to remove the tax levy on oil imports. Marcos previously mentioned he has been discussing with leaders of the Senate and House of Representatives to grant him authority to implement temporary relief measures. This comes as a response to the ongoing conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran.
Actually, given the situation worldwide, not just in the Philippines, I think it would be something that would be smart to consider, especially since meron po tayong mga nakikitang projections lately kung magkano yung magiging fuel in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And medyo, I'm sure most, if not all, would be affected by the sudden surge in the prices. So if ever that's necessary, then I believe that he should be granted.
Tensions in the Middle East may push inflation even higher this year. On BNC's Business 360, Nicolas Mapa, chief economist at Metrobank, said the conflict hit the Philippines at a difficult time. He noted that the war makes 2026 more challenging for the economy.
We already had pegged inflation to accelerate in 2026, but because of this oil price shock, we'll have to factor in faster inflation this year. And that's always sort of the direct foil or the direct counter to our strongest growth source, which is household consumption.
Meralco will review its fuel position, including liquefied natural gas, coal, and diesel, as these could impact power prices. In a social media post, company chairman, CEO, and ultra-Bilyonaryo Manny Pangilinan said they aim to ensure adequate power supply and manage price volatility responsibly. He also urged consumers to conserve electricity, noting that the Philippines imports much of the fuel used to generate power. Meralco signs a memorandum of understanding with South Korea's state-owned nuclear operator and export credit agency to explore nuclear energy and modernize the Philippine power grid. The MOU involved Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power and the Export-Import Bank of Korea. This will provide a framework for research, knowledge exchange, and potential financing. Meralco Chairman Manny Pangilinan and executives led the signing alongside South Korean officials. The partnership aimed to strengthen energy security, diversify the power mix, and support sustainability targets. Quezon City Representative Bong Suntay says there is no malice intended in his controversial remark about Ann Curtis amid strong public scrutiny. On BNC's The Spoke, Suntay offers a public apology for his controversial remark, but stands firm on his analogy, saying it was essential to make a point in the context of the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara Duterte.
If people were offended, that was not the intention, and I want to apologize to those people, but that was never the intention.
Well, that's good that you want
So
to
you want to
apologize.
apologize to
Kasi as you
people
said,
who
no?
feel offended.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I stand by the analogy that I made. It was an analogy that I made to drive a point.
Could this constitute as your apology already to the public?
Yeah.
Yes, as I've said even last night, there was no malice intended in the statement. If it was taken out of context and if different conclusions to the statements were made, I apologize to those people who were offended, especially women.
So that's the public apology,
Who were
right?
offended, yeah. But as I also said, that statement, that analogy, was made in the context of that impeachment proceeding.
Despite his apology, various personalities and women's advocacy groups continue to call out the congressman, noting the remark comes during Women's Month, a time when efforts to promote women's empowerment are highlighted. The government is exploring alternative sources to shield Filipinos from global oil price shocks amid rising tensions in the Middle East. Energy Secretary Sharon Garin says only 20% of the world's energy passes through the Strait of Hormuz. She notes that many countries are willing to sell oil to the Philippines, reducing the risk of supply disruption. DOE Oil Industry Management Bureau Director Rino Abad says alternative suppliers include the U.S., Canada, South America, and Africa. As of now, Garin says oil companies have sufficient inventory to meet fuel demand. Firms are obligated to hold a 30-day stock of crude oil and a 15-day stock of refined petroleum products. The government is also directing companies to submit contingency measures for potential supply challenges. The Philippine government is preparing for a possible mass repatriation of overseas Filipino workers in the Middle East amid escalating tensions between the United States and Iran. Department of the Interior and Local Government Secretary John Vic Remilla is now calculating the logistical requirements for a large-scale evacuation.
Philippine Airlines has a fleet of think 50 planes, only which 20 can make it, 25 can make it there to the Middle East and back. If you're talking about the capacity of 5,000 a day, so if you do the math,
5,000 a day.
kung Philippine Airlines na, diba? Siyempre, ayun na yun natin na, including Cebu Pacific has 2 aircraft that can go there. So, kung titigin mo yung math na yun, kung 5,000 passengers a day, kaya natin pabalik-balik dito. Do the math, 1 million divided by 4,000. That's 250 days. Araw-araw. So, the logistics is not easy, but if it is necessary, we will do our best para maibalik sila.
Remulla estimates the economy could suffer at least $6 billion in losses if as many as 1 million Filipino workers lose their jobs due to repatriation.
Don't you think it's reactionary to evacuate the entire OFWs na?
Well, it's you have a option 1 and option 10. The option 10 is mass evacuation. Option 1 is maybe the wait for the conflict to resolve itself. Tingnan natin. But let's not make harsh decisions. Let's not make harsh pronouncements. I'm just giving you the overview of what nangyayari.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Navy says details of possible staging areas will be released once finalized. It adds that the Armed Forces of the Philippines has multiple contingency plans in place should evacuation operations become necessary. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says U.S. and Israeli actions in the Middle East appear inconsistent with international law. His remarks come after U.S. and Israeli forces launched strikes against Iran following stalled negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program.
Prima facie, it appears that these actions are inconsistent with international law. And look, the first thing I'll say with respect to that, it's for the United States and Israel to make the case, and for whether or not that is the case. And it's for others, more expert than me, non-lawyer, certainly non-international lawyer, who are more expert to make that determination.
Carney also emphasizes that Canada was neither informed nor consulted before the strikes and was not asked to participate. Iranian media reports the building housing Iran's assembly of experts is destroyed after an air attack. The assembly is tasked with choosing a leader to replace slain Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. While reports have yet to determine the exact date of the attack, it was not immediately clear if anyone died because of the attack or who was behind it. In Washington, President Donald Trump said that most of the people he had considered as potential future leaders for Iran are now dead.
You have someone in mind right now, as you said, all the people you have in mind have been taken out.
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group, they may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming, and pretty soon we're not going to know anybody.
The House Justice Committee greenlights the impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte to proceed to the next stage. Lawmakers on Wednesday voted to declare 2 impeachment raps against Duterte sufficient in substance, with 54 votes in favor, 1 against, and no abstentions. The complaints filed by Father Bong Saballa and attorney Nathaniel Cabrera accused Duterte of betrayal of public trust and culpable violation of the Constitution. Allegations include the misuse of over 600 million pesos in confidential funds and threats against President Bongbong Marcos and his family. House leaders clarified that the vote does not determine Duterte's guilt. They say the decision only allows the constitutional process to proceed. The vice president has been ordered to file her answer within 10 calendar days. The president's spokesperson for the impeachment trial, attorney Michael Poa, said her legal team will review the actions taken by the House and the committee, as well as the records of the proceedings. We'll take a short break. This is Business Brief. Today on Business Brief, we look at the Philippines National Blockchain Initiative, which is a bold plan aiming to make government services faster, more secure, and more accountable. But what does it really mean for citizens, businesses, and trust in government? We dig in and ask the critical questions, and joining us this afternoon is Dr. Al Villarrica, Technology Executive and Blockchain Architect, founder of C3Q Tech and creator of Cadena, a blockchain platform for government and enterprise use. He's also co-founder of Cadena Foundation Incorporated and an active contributor to Philippine blockchain legislation and national digital infrastructure initiatives. Dr. Villarrica, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much
Can I
for
call you
having
Al?
me. Yes, please.
Okay,
Please
Al,
do.
to start, now, for viewers who aren't familiar, can you explain in simple terms what is blockchain and how does it actually work?
So the easiest way to explain what a blockchain does is think of a notebook that is shared. So when someone writes on this notebook, everyone who actually can view that notebook sees what's been written, and you basically can't change what's on the notebook. You can make amendments to the notebook, but you can't change what's there. You can't erase it. You can't delete things. You can just add to this notebook. So it's like you write on this, and then it gets spread everywhere that notebook's available.
Now, when we talk about a national blockchain, what problem is it really trying to solve? Is it corruption, inefficiency, data fragmentation, or something else?
So that's a good question. So actually, it's used to solve almost all of those things. So you can use the technology. It's think of it like a foundation or a building block in a house. You can use the technology to make, let's say, the data available to all the departments, all the agencies. So if you had, for example, personal information that is in let's say SEC, that personal information could be available in DICT, e-travel, and all those other applications. But right now, the focus has been kind of changed somewhat to look at how can it be used to help in curbing corruption. It won't solve the problem, but it will at least make it a little bit easier to trace what happens if corruption happens in a government.
Now, why blockchain? Why not simply upgrade existing government databases, cybersecurity systems? Now, what makes distributed architecture better in this context?
Yeah, so if the issue with a database is that there is one single owner. So if that means that the IT folks that are actually managing that database have access to that database. So if you wanted to change it secretly, for example, it becomes possible. Whereas if you had this blockchain where, as I mentioned, if you had this notebook that were spread around many agencies and also maybe the public, right? So that means that if someone writes something on this notebook, then everyone will see it. It can be audited. You can actually find out if someone has changed it or is actually asking to change it. So that's the advantage of the technology.
If everything's connected, let's say different agencies have this, if one agency changes one thing, it automatically changes in real time?
Exactly.
And they can see it?
At exactly the point that they add something or add a piece of information to their, let's say, node, all the nodes will have the exact same information at exactly the same time. So you'll know when it was added, who added it, and so on and so forth. So, and then what was added.
Real-time notification.
It's instantaneous replication or instantaneous copying to all of the nodes so that they will have exactly the same information that every other node will have.
Now, if the government controls the nodes, can we really call it decentralized, or is it more centralized than it sounds?
So if you had multiple agencies actually run nodes, then in theory, the agencies would have control. So in essence, it's somewhat decentralized, more like a consortium. But in order to, I guess, to prevent collusion among the agencies, then it would be good to have the academe run these nodes so that when you write to the node, everyone has it, not just the government agency. If you had private industry run nodes, if you had the telcos run nodes. So as you expand the usage of the blockchain across the Philippines, then it would be nice to have as many active participants as possible so that everyone sees what happens on
I guess
this
if you
chain.
have a lot of independent agencies like academe, outside
Civic
of government
groups,
to look at that, it creates a greater transparency?
Yes, because if we take that same notebook analogy, if the government basically adds some information to this blockchain, then the civic groups, the watch groups, the different
They will know.
They will know that it's been there. So if someone tries
And
to
they can question
move
that.
it, then yes, they can question it. They can actually see what's happening on the chain.
How do we balance transparency with privacy? Now, can selective privacy prevent abuse without weakening accountability?
So that's really interesting, right? So in most of the blockchains today, when you put information there, it is really transparent. It's full transparency.
Open to the public.
Open to the public. Everyone sees exactly what gets shown there. But there's technology out there that you can basically say, okay, for example, in a company, maybe the company name is public, but maybe certain parts of that company
Are
might
redacted.
be redacted.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you could put that on the blockchain and then encrypt all of the different things that are not visible to the public. But at least you have that record on the chain, on the blockchain.
So if somebody wants to look at it, they can request it and
Correct.
see it.
So then it's almost like you get a secret decoder key to say, okay, if maybe you have to go to court and then you basically have to say, who actually owns this thing, who is the ultimate beneficial owner. That information might be on the chain, encrypted, but then a court order might say, okay, maybe DICT, please allow us to see the information on the chain, just so that you have to build the trust, because I think the trust in the Philippine government today is kind of at an all-time low, I guess.
Now, which government service should be the first priority? You mentioned different agencies, but would it be land titles, procurement, digital IDs, voting, or welfare distribution, and why? Or all of those?
So actually, I think because there has been a lot of focus on the corruption in our government, that is probably the first thing that will happen, right? So if we can follow the money, if we can say, okay, here's the General Appropriations Act, and then here's all the projects from all the departments, and then you can actually trace the flow of funds up until it hits a person or a contractor, that would be the ideal use case. Things like the land titles and all that can follow, but those are all equally important because there's also fraud in land titling. There are many other use cases for the chain. I think it's important to try and, find the best use of the technology beyond, proving a document has been published or something along those lines. Because there are a lot of those things happening today that it's kind of like being used in maybe an over-engineered way, kind of like overkill for what it's trying to do. But if you actually used it in the proper way, then maybe we can show the proper trail, the audit trail that will help us uncover any anomalies.
How can we also be sure that the initial information, the data that will be placed in the blockchain initially is the right information?
So I think that's one of the key things that we have to kind of get over, right? So if you put bad data there, the bad data will kind of be published along with everything else. The ideal scenario would be the IT systems that the government uses would actually connect directly to the blockchain, so that as the transactions actually happen within the government, those things could get recorded real time.
Okay.
So it's not like you say, okay, we're gonna do a bunch of transactions, and then all of a sudden, 7 days from now, you're gonna say, okay, here are all the transactions that we did in the last 7 days. So if you make it all real time, then and it's being used by the IT systems of these different agencies, then you can probably be more assured that it's
the right information.
It's the right information. So if it's a procurement, if our PhilJEPS system were to record things as, let's say, bids get submitted or bids get put into the system, and as the bids actually come in from the different contractors, you can record all of that stuff as it's happening, not just in arrears, right?
Now, what are the risks of locking national infrastructure into a single blockchain system. Now, how do we make it future-proof?
So that's a really good question, because I think a lot of people are saying, what if we pick one blockchain and then all of a sudden we're stuck with that blockchain forever? I think one of the most important parts to remember is that almost all the blockchains have to be open source, which means that anyone can look at the source code, anyone can adapt, anyone can modify it, make changes to it. So as long as the blockchain that is selected, we're hoping that the government picks a blockchain that has all the properties it needs. As long as the system is open source, then you can have a community of developers and the government work together to improve that blockchain as it lives on from the time that it actually gets deployed. So it doesn't become a single company, though there's there are chains that are made by single companies. But if it's open source and anyone has the right to modify it.
It can evolve, and if you build a strong enough community, people can exchange ideas how to make it better in the future.
Exactly. And it would be nice for everyone to try and poke holes at it, right? So if some people might actually write this source code and then they write the program and maybe there are some mistakes because we're all human. So if there are security people who would like to review the code, they can actually do that and then contribute to the project.
How do you stop the bad apples looking at the open source and actually looking at, let's say, security gaps and using it to their advantage?
So that will always happen, right? Yes. So if you look at some of the, I guess, earlier blockchains that have security issues in them, and then you can then say, oh, I know that I can take advantage of the security hole and so on and so forth.
There's a kink in the system.
Exactly.
Like
but so if we have enough people to actually make sure that this system is as secure as possible, then hopefully we'll have more good apples than bad apples.
How strong is the community today?
There are, I think, over 100 different companies here in the Philippines that actually work with blockchain.
Hand in hand also?
Some of them work with others. Some of them are, I guess some people work at different levels. Some of them use blockchain. Some of them actually work on blockchain. So there's probably maybe a handful of companies that actually develop blockchains. And then there are more companies that actually use it rather than develop the actual chain.
We were discussing a while ago in the blockchain, since it's permanent, how do you correct the errors? And if it's not errors, how do you also stop those who will change, who would want to tamper that?
So the blockchain is not a perfect system. So it is a, let's call it a tamper-resistant system, because nothing is tamper-proof. There's no system out there that's tamper-proof. But it will try and make things as tamper-resistant as possible. If you had to issue a correction, then that is something that you could say, okay, I'm going to issue a correction on the blockchain, and then that correction will be accepted, and it will be seen by everyone. But
so they'll know who made the correction.
Who made the correction, exactly. And if you make a correction, you probably will want to put a reason why you made that correction. Maybe it was a clerical error or something along those lines. But at least you'll see, okay, here's what the original, let's say, amount was, and then here's what the new amount is. But it has changed because someone issued that thing. And I think it's important to attribute who did what to these records.
I guess in those kinds of systems, there has to be a point person, because how can you be sure that those who are making the changes is that person, or is it they become anonymous?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So like if you actually write to the chain, usually it's an IT system that would write to this. So for example, if DBM had an IT system that were writing budget records to this thing, they would have a way of authorizing themselves to write to this. So they would be the source of truth. If you were to issue, let's say, documents, or if you wanted to sign documents, then you can also say, okay, the people who are signing these documents have to have been previously KYC'd, for example, so that you can say, okay, this person is the one that issued that record, and then they can then do the, then it gets accepted by the system.
Now, what does success look like in 5 years? How do you see it? Is it faster services, lower corruption, reduced costs?
So I think that's a really, really hard question to answer. So 5 years is a long time from now. But it's one of those things where I think all of the above, right? So if we actually had this system where all the agencies were cooperating with each other, in addition to private industry and civic groups and all those companies, then that would help with duplication issues, right? So you don't have records that have to be entered everywhere. We're hoping that it will provide enough of a audit trail so that if any corruption happens, then you can go back in time and follow the cookie crumbs to see who did what, who signed something into a change. So for example, if you made a modification to the budget, which is perfectly legal, you can make a modification to budget, but we would like to attribute that to the actual actors who actually did it. So for example, if there's a committee in legislature that says, okay, we're gonna change this from DepEd to DPWH, everyone who voted yes should sign it, and everyone who voted no should sign it, and it could be completely
And it's
okay.
there permanent.
And it's permanent, exactly.
So even if it's there for a long time, you can actually look back and easily investigate, easily
Correct.
look at what's wrong, who did this, who did that.
Exactly. So the blockchain itself will keep history forever. So it will just keep growing. It's like your audit trail that will never disappear, right? It's like your cookie crumbs that nobody can step on and erase. You can't control this because there are enough, let's call them validators, both in private industry and academia and in the government.
Yeah, that would be good if that really happens. You know, you have independent agencies looking into the system, trying to see whether there are kinks, whether there are changes that are made. Now, how do we make sure Filipinos who with low digital literacy or limited internet, access aren't left behind?
So,
how fast is the technology evolving?
So the technology actually is evolving quite quickly these days, although kind of if you look at the AI, that's evolving even faster.
Oh, yes.
But blockchain kind of has stabilized. So if you look at it from 10 years ago to today, there are a lot of changes that have happened, but they are more like solidifying what the chains can do. But I think in terms of how do you keep the Filipino people up to date with this stuff, I guess that's where education, kind of like this program
because,
that you have here.
Sometimes fear of not knowing what's there. When you talk about technology, it's sometimes very technical, and if you don't really understand it, sometimes the adoption is very slow.
Right, and I think the actual user interface to access the technology. So, the blockchain stuff might be very, very technical. It's a little bit hard to understand what these things actually do. But there's always going to be a portal. There's going to be something that an ordinary person who's not a scientist will be able to look into this and say, hey, I can look at some records. I can see who signed this. I can do all those things. It's really the user interface or the user experience that will help in that sense. It's not because you're not going to want to look at the bits and bytes of this thing. It's quite intense.
Yeah. Now, finally, Al, if implemented successfully, how could this reshape the relationship between the people and the state of the Philippines in terms of transparency, accountability, and trust?
So I think if we implemented this right, then it becomes more like kind of like a shared system across, and then you kind of get more trust. I guess trust has to grow.
Yes.
So if the government were to make this more transparent, and then you could see that things are running smoothly, and then maybe if there's some anomalies, then they can be explained and things like that. It becomes more like with the open system, we don't need to request records anymore from the government. We can actually ask, get the records straight from the blockchain because it's an open system. So it becomes more like almost like that freedom of information.
Are you able
made real.
to share, Al, if there's a government agency right now doing blockchain or preparing to do blockchain?
There are actually a number of agencies that
As a proof of concept.
are doing it. The one that we've worked with so far is the SEC. So they are actually moving to launch quite soon a blockchain where you can sign documents and prove that the person who signed it is really who they say they are because they have properly provided identity at the beginning.
That's good to know. That's good. At least you'll have a proof of concept, and if that works, you can actually.
Then maybe we can copy paste that
yes.
across the government, and private industry could
Yes.
also use the same kind of system.
Okay. On that note, Al, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Your insights, and hopefully, if these blockchains are implemented properly, we do gain more trust, more transparency, more accountability, and of course, a synergy among all agencies. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll take a short break. This is Business Brief. Asian shares drop as the war in Iran widens. All these shares are in the red, with Kospi falling the most at over 12%. In currency trading, the US dollar trade mixed against the Asian currencies. In commodities, gold and oil trades higher. In crypto, Bitcoin rises almost 0.5%, and Ethereum gains 0.4%. Narine Tan, daughter of Berjaya Corporation founder Vincent Tan, takes full control as sole CEO of the Malaysian conglomerate. The appointment follows the retirement of co-CEO Vivian Cheng, Chief Fan, and marks a new chapter of leadership for the group. Berjaya highlights Tan's 26 years of experience in sales, operations, and business development, praising her strategic foresight and resilience. The company said Tan's leadership will focus on strengthening core operations and delivering sustainable value to stakeholders. Philippine shares end in the negative territory. The PSEI closes over 2% lower to 63.07. All of these sectoral indices are in the red, with mining and oil falling the most at over 6%. Decliners outpace advancers 179 to 35, with value turnover at 8.7 billion pesos. Majority of the day's most active stocks are in the red, with DigiPlus falling the most at more than 8%. In currencies, the peso closes at 58.57 against the US dollar, down from the previous close of 58.435. DigiPlus Interactive begins funding Hong Kong-listed International Entertainment Corporation, or IEC, through a convertible note deal, a first step in taking majority control of the group's casino operations. The first tranche, worth about 5.9 billion pesos, was completed on March 3, following shareholder approval and a November 2025 subscription agreement. A second tranche of another 5.9 billion pesos is expected within 3 months, bringing DigiPlus' total investment to around 11.8 billion pesos. If fully converted, DigiPlus could own nearly 54% of IEC, gaining control and expanding beyond Philippine online gaming into the regional market. The Securities and Exchange Commission steps into a dispute at Liberty Flour Mills between Chairman John Carlos Uy and former President Sandra Judy Uy over alleged shareholder rights violations. The company received a summons after complaints about denied access to records despite documents already being provided. LFM is preparing its response and will provide additional financial materials. Shareholders also flagged uncollected receivables and potential conflicts of interest. The Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, and the Department of Finance signed a loan agreement worth 21.6 billion yen, or roughly $137 million, for the next MRT Line 3 rehabilitation project. The loan will support ongoing improvements to the Metro Rail transit system, including power supply upgrades, new bogie frames, ballast replacements, station renovations, and the acquisition of depot and maintenance equipment. The project reflects 70 years of Japan-Philippines partnership in delivering safe and efficient infrastructure projects. AirAsia CEO Tony Fernandez highlights the airline's commitment to diversity and inclusivity even mid-flight. Fernandez shared a photo with two crew members celebrating the mix of backgrounds, generations, and personalities that define AirAsia's team. He joked about their different walks of life while emphasizing that they are all Malaysians and proud AirAsia All-Stars. Fernandez also praised the crew for providing an exceptional flight experience. Wildflower Cafe Plus Bakery is expanding to Cebu in 2026, bringing a fresh design twist. Owner Ana Lorenzana de Ocampo said the new location will feature a collaboration with internationally acclaimed furniture designer Kenneth Cobantue, creating what she calls living art. She noted this landmark project blends gourmet dining with high-profile design, highlighting Filipino talent. Lorenzana described the Cebu venture as proudly local, globally inspired. Metrobank, owned by the T family, will issue its first peso-denominated ASEAN sustainability bonds, targeting at least 5 billion pesos. The 1.5-year fixed-rate bonds are part of the bank's 200 billion peso debt program and are subject to market conditions. Proceeds will support lending operations and finance assets under its sustainable finance framework. FMIC, ING Bank Manila Branch, and Standard Chartered Bank will serve as joint lead managers and book runners for the offering. De La Salle University Laguna is switching to 100% renewable electricity through a deal with ASEAN Renewable Energy Solutions. The transition, enabled by the government's Green Energy Option Program, will reduce the campus carbon footprint and support sustainability goals. DLSU officials said the move aligns with the university's mission to integrate sustainability into education and research. ASEAN Res highlighted the partnership as part of a broader shift toward clean energy among Philippine organizations. Jollibee Foods, led by Tony Tan Kak Thiong, is exploring an initial public offering for its Vietnamese coffee brand Highlands Coffee. The IPO, targeting a 2027 listing in Vietnam, aimed to fund the brand's expansion and raise its corporate profile. Highlands Coffee has grown from 56 stores in 2012 to nearly 1,000 outlets, becoming Vietnam's largest coffee chain. Jollibee said the move will help Highlands Coffee accelerate growth across Vietnam and the wider Southeast Asian market. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Robert Tan. Join us again tomorrow for the stories that help you plan your next big, bold business move. Only here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.